I want to start today's podcast by talking about how to study for the Open Group Architecture Framework exam, the TOGAF 10 exam. Now, I've come to realize that there are some people who out there who are not completely aware of how to study and think that a training is their only course of action. And while that's a very good course of action, it's a good idea to go through a training because a trainer can properly tell you how to study for the exam and what TOGAF is and what enterprise architecture is, especially if you're doing the TOGAF framework for the first time. That's not your only course of action. The Open Group Architecture Framework provides you with a sufficient amount of information and knowledge to help you study for the exam by yourself. I gave my first TOGAF exam by myself. In fact, I've given all my TOGAF exams by myself. But more importantly, the first one, I studied for TOGAF 8.1.1 myself and gave the exam and cleared it. And then I upgraded it to 9 and then 9.1 and 9.2 and now 10. So how do you study for the TOGAF exam? While there is a tremendous amount of detail there, but today I'm going to only talk about the study material. If you go to the Open Group website and if you'll have to log in to the website first. So on the top right hand side, you'll find a link where you can log in to the website. And then, it asks you for a user ID and password. If you don't have one, you will have to create one. And then you go to the right hand side, again top, you'll find a link called library, within which there's another link called TOGAF library. If you go there, you will find various links. Click on the TOGAF standard and then the TOGAF standard 10th edition if you click on it. Sometimes it asks you to log in again. So, click on login to download. And then if you do that, it'll take you back to the home page of the TOGAF library, where on the left-hand side, you will find visit the TOGAF library and then TOGAF standard again, right? The second link usually is the TOGAF standard 10th edition. It keeps changing. Now, I am a silver partner of TOGAF, so I have the downloads available as well, but you can click on view HTML edition and add to download. And then if you go to download, you'll find a link to the TOGAF library, or basically the TOGAF book of knowledge. It takes a little time to load, and then there you go. You've got introduction and core, and on the left-hand side, you'll find all the menu items, and on the right-hand side, you'll find the book. Now, the book is not the only thing that you need to study for TOGAF 10. That has changed a little bit. So go back to the TOGAF library, and the third link, you will find the series guides, right? Some of these series guides are available for download in PDF format for everybody. They're publicly available. You don't have to be a silver partner for it. Others, they're not available for download, but you can always read the HTML edition. You don't really need a PDF version to study it. Now, I understand that PDF is convenient, especially if you want to study offline when there is no internet. But what are the chances that you don't have an internet connection anywhere in the world these days? I mean, very few. If you're studying for TOGAF framework, there's a very high chance that you have internet available for you at all times. So that is the TOGAF framework and how to study for it. Now, today's topic, let's talk about it. Leadership, conflict, and corporate games. That's the topic of the day. It's an interesting topic. We've done a few topics on corporate politics and about personal goals and organizational goals and all of that. I wanted to cover this today because if you're an enterprise architect, or if you're in a leadership position where you're going to use your enterprise architecture knowledge to get the job done, there's a very high chance that you're going to face stakeholder conflicts, right? You'll have multiple stakeholders. Each stakeholder will have what they need. They'll tell you what they need, what their requirements are, and these requirements may or may not align. They might have different requirements, and you might have to meet all these requirements of all these stakeholders, and it becomes sometimes very important for you to meet these conflicting requirements to make the enterprise architecture project or whatever project that you're working on successful. And conflict resolution is a leadership topic that everybody needs to understand well. In fact, it is one of the things that will make you a good or a bad leader. Now, what are conflicts? If you think about it, conflicts are when multiple people are trying to use a limited set of resources to achieve their objectives, their career objectives, their personal objectives, whatever. Very much sounds like a game, doesn't it? I mean, what is a game after all? A game is there's a dictionary definition of game. A game is an activity or a sport, usually involving some kind of skill or knowledge or a chance in which you follow fixed rules and try to win against an opponent to solve a puzzle. Usually there are resources, there are limited resources, and then multiple people, fight to meet, to use these resources to basically win according to the rules of the game. Now, take football, for example. In football, you have 90 minutes. The resource here is 90 minutes. And the objective is to make as many goals as you can, and the team that makes the maximum number of goals wins. Take chess, for example. Again, there is an opponent and you're playing according to the rules, and the objective is to win. Now, there are finite games and infinite games, and Simon Sinek has written a book on this, and he defines finite and infinite games. So the games that we know, the games like chess and football and so on, are really finite games because there are a limited set of rules, and and everyone is supposed to play by the rules, and there is a common objective that everybody is aware of. And finite games usually have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they have opponents, and sometimes you might have teams, but you are aware of who are the people who are playing the game, who is with you, who is against you, and there's a very clear demarcation of that, and your opponents are trying to defeat you in the game, and you are trying to defeat the opponent in the game, and that's how it goes. But then there are infinite games, right? Simon Sinek says that, infinite games are those games where the rules are not defined. You don't know what the rules are, and the rules keep changing from time to time. The players are not defined. Some of the players who you might be playing with at this point in time, who might be your allies or teammates, might suddenly turn into your opponents, right? There is no beginning, there is no end. These games are, infinite in their nature. They continuously keep on going. And the objectives also keep on changing. You don't know what you're trying to do. Today you might be into one objective. You might have a goal, and then the goal might shift. Tomorrow you might have a different goal. And that is what an infinite game is. And businesses are usually in the infinite game, because most of the businesses that we know today were not there, 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They were different businesses, they were different organizations, and some of these organizations died out and new organizations were formed, and the players kept on changing, right? The objectives also kept on changing, if you think about it, right? And one business might switch its objectives from being a pharmaceutical company to becoming some technology company or what have you. There are so many examples out there that have done that. So finite and infinite games. But what we will talk about today are finite games, right? Because infinite games are good as far as businesses are concerned and a long-term view is concerned. And in the infinite game, the objective of the players is not to win, but rather to survive, to sustain as long as possible, to continue to survive for a long period of time. And whoever survives the most, essentially, there is no end winner or loser, but is winning, right? The longer you survive, the longer you win. But we don't encounter infinite games on a day-to-day basis. I mean, sometimes we do, and that's a very different topic that I would like to talk about in one of my future episodes. But we also encounter finite games, right? We also encounter competition. We also encounter situations where the resources are few, and only one out of the two becomes the ultimate winner, right? So for finite games, there's something called a game theory. Game theory essentially means it's a branch of applied mathematics that studies how rational agents make strategic decisions. Essentially, it is theory about how to win a game. And one of the classic examples of game theory is, and a very simple one for that matter, is the prisoner's dilemma. All right? Let's assume that there are two prisoners who get caught, doing a burglary, for example, right? They were basically robbing a house together, and they get caught. Now, both the prisoners are kept in two different rooms. There is evidence, but probably not sufficient evidence. So if one of them defects on the other, or one of them, let's say you and I are playing the game, right? And you rat on me, then you go free, right? And I get, I don't know, some jail time. So there is a matrix in which there are these multiple situations. If both of us don't rat out on each other, if both of us are silent, then there is some evidence that we were there at the scene. And because we don't have sufficient evidence, or we are not 100% sure, there will be less of a jail time. So we'll both get 1 year of jail time. This is a completely hypothetical situation, and I am not a legal expert. So, try to understand what I'm trying to say. So both of us, you and I, we remain silent. And so both of us get 1 year of jail time. But if I rat out on you, I go free and you get 5 years. If you rat out on me, you go free and I get 5 years of jail time. And if both of us rat out on each other, then both of us serve 2 years of jail time. Now think about it. If I don't rat out on you, if I stay silent, there are two things that can happen. Either you stay silent too, or you rat out on me, right? So my decision needs to be based on what is the decision that you are going to take, and what is the probability that you will stay silent. Because whether or not you stay silent, I am benefited if I rat out on you. Let's say I rat out on you and you rat out on me, we both get only 2 years of jail time. But if I rat out on you and you stay silent, I go free. So there is a benefit in speaking rather than staying silent. Now this is game theory. This is a mathematical study of how you would take decisions based on your opponent's decisions. There's a tremendous amount of study that has been done. There is another game theory like this. This is called the prisoner's dilemma. There's another one called iterative elimination of strictly dominated strategies. It's a different kind of strategy. Here we have a 2x2 matrix. There we have a 3x3 matrix. And it's a lot more complex for me to explain it to you on this podcast. But my point is, it's a very interesting field, and studying game theory is something that you should do as a interest. It's very interesting for me, and I've read a number of books on it. And in fact, the movie A Beautiful Mind, the protagonist of that movie is John Nash, and John Nash was the one who's done tremendous amount of work in this area, game theory. Something that you should look out for. Anyways, so there are these games that we play within the corporates, and there will come a time when there will be conflict. Multiple stakeholders will require different things, and you might have to resolve these conflicts as a part of your job. So what do you do? So TOGAF does a very interesting thing here. TOGAF 10 specifically has come up with a new concept called architecture alternatives method, where on the top it has vision, principles, and requirements. So we try to understand what the vision is of the organization, because conflicts arise because of personal reasons, right? We have conflicts because different stakeholders want different things. But if you think about it, all these stakeholders are a part of a larger organization themselves, right? So if we have an organizational vision, some way or the other, the requirements of these stakeholders has to align with that vision, right? So we keep vision as the top priority, and then we've got principles. The vision says what to do, and the principle says how to do it, right? What are the things that we'll keep in mind when we will try to meet that vision? And then you have requirements, which are a little bit more specific. So we take all of these into account, and then based on that, we come up with alternative architectures that meet the requirements of the alternative stakeholders, right? We have criteria which basically meet the requirements, and we have alternatives. And then we sit together with our stakeholders and we talk to them about the vision, principles, and requirements, about the criteria that they have, and how each alternative meets the requirements, and try to come up with a resolution where either we select an alternative, and everybody agrees to it, or we take aspects of each alternative and build a third or a fourth alternative that meets some of the criteria of all the stakeholders, right? And then they agree that this is fine, So that's one way of doing conflict resolution that TOGAF recommends. Now, Harvard also has something called the H.E.A.R framework. Okay, H.E.A.R stands for hedging, emphasizing, acknowledging, and reframing. Hedging means hedging your claims. When you say that this is what you're really looking for, You are also open to hearing other alternatives. You're not specific about this is exactly what I want, but you're providing your vision that this is what I'm really looking for. And it's okay if we dilly-dally a little bit as long as these things are met. If you tell them you're wrong and I am right, or if you tell them this is exactly how it's going to be done, then the conflict doesn't get resolved. It becomes bigger. So that's called hedging your claims. You're claiming, but you're hedging it. You're saying, I'm open to other possibilities as well. And then you have emphasizing your agreement. So E stands for emphasizing your agreement. Because when there are conflicts, right, when you have to disagree with somebody, right, you don't disagree with everything that the other person says, right? There are some aspects that you don't agree with, but then there are other aspects that you do agree with. And this is a little bit of a psychological framework from a leadership standpoint, right? If you tell someone that I don't agree, or if you only focus on things that you don't agree on and just skip the points that you do agree, it creates a competitive environment, a conflicting environment where the other person thinks that you don't care about what he thinks. So you emphasize your agreement on certain topics that you do agree with the opponent. That creates a positive frame of mind. The opponent also thinks that, okay, this person is agreeing with some of my points, but there are some other points that he does not agree with, right? So that's called emphasizing agreement. And then we have acknowledging the other side's perspective, right? You tell them that I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. I understand your perspective, right? You acknowledge them, which again is a exercise in creating a positive mindset. And then finally, you reframe. You reframe to the positive of finding a solution that works for both of you. Try to find a solution that has aspects. Again, we are going back to alternative architectures. What have you? The alternative architecture solution that provided by TOGAF is a little technical in nature. The H.E.A.R framework from Harvard is more a leadership and a psychological framework. Here you're reframing to the positive by finding a solution that meets both the requirements, where all the stakeholders are in the room that are discussing this, are willing to agree to either let go some of the things that they were really looking for, or let you have some of the things that you wanted as your whatever is your requirement. So that is the H.E.A.R framework from Harvard. So there are a number of ways and means by which you can resolve conflicts. There are some frameworks available out there, but mostly what we do is intuition. We've had years and years of experience in solving problems, and we found stakeholders to be reasonable some of the times and unreasonable other times, and we sort of work our way through them to figure out how we can fix things. But there are some of these frameworks available out there. There's game theory. There's the H.E.A.R framework from Harvard. There is the alternative architecture method provided by TOGAF, which essentially help you. And you can't really just read these and become an expert in conflict resolution. It takes a tremendous amount of practice. You need to keep practicing these different frameworks. You need to keep practicing empathy when you are in negotiations. And that helps quite a bit. Before I end this episode, I would like to remind you that if you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you don't, well, like and subscribe anyway. Just let me know what you did not like about it, and I will see how I can improve. Share this podcast with a friend, just one friend. Good if you could pause the show right now and share it. Remember, this podcast, Enterprise Architecture Radio, is an initiative to bring the enterprise architecture community together, to talk and collaborate and communicate, so we can all learn and grow. It's very easy to find this community. Just search for Enterprise Architecture Radio anywhere. LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram, or any other social media. Talk to me.